Japan is one of the countries most famous for its treasure trove of ghost stories, known as kaiden, tales of strange, mysterious events that people claim to have encountered. Classic kaiden include stories like Yuki-onna, the Snow Woman, Yotsuya Kaiden, or Batendoro, the Peony Lantern. But perhaps the most famous of all is the tale of Mimanashi Hoichi, Hoichi the Earless. Today, Ghost Asian would like to share this story with you. Unlike many kaiden, which have vague origins passed down orally from generation to generation or told during ghost story gatherings, the story of Hoichi has a more concrete source. The original was written by a man named Eisuke in 1782, and the version most widely known today comes from writer Lafcadio Hearn, published in 1904. According to historical records, over 800 years ago, at Dan no Yura, in the Shimonoseki Strait of southwestern Japan, a ferocious battle took place between the Heike and Genji clans. The Heike were utterly defeated. Even the child Emperor Antoku, only 6 years old, was drowned at sea. Their deaths left the entire area cursed, as the souls of the Heike could not find peace and roamed the world of the living. It was said that on some nights, ghostly fires Hidadama would drift along the shoreline or flicker over the waves. The sound of the wind howling there was said to be the cries of battle from centuries past. Sailors feared the waters at night, for the spirits would rise from the sea to capsize boats, and any foolhardy enough to swim would be dragged into the depths and drowned. To appease these restless spirits, the temple of Amideji was built nearby, with a graveyard commemorating the fallen emperor and his retainers. Still, the ghosts of the Heike were not at rest, and sightings of them continued. Centuries later, there lived in Shimonoseki a blind musician named Hoichi. He was celebrated across the region for his talent in reciting poems, telling tales, and playing the biwa, a traditional lute. He was most famous for his epic recitations of the Battle of Dan no Yura. It was said that when Hoichi sang of the battle, even demons would weep. Despite his fame, Hoichi was very poor. Fortunately, he befriended a priest of Amideji temple who, impressed by his gift, offered him food and lodging in exchange for his music. One hot summer night, the priest was called away to attend the funeral of a parishioner, leaving Hoichi alone at the temple. The night was stifling, so Hoichi sat out on the veranda with his biwa, playing to pass the time. Past midnight, he heard footsteps coming from the rear gate, crossing the garden, and stopping right in front of him. It was not the priest. A stern, commanding voice called, "Hoichi." The voice was sharp, like that of a samurai addressing a commoner. Startled, Hoichi froze until the voice called his name a second time. Trembling, he replied, "Yes, I am here. Please forgive this blind man, but who is calling me?" The voice softened. "Do not be afraid. I am a retainer stationed nearby. My lord has heard of your skill at singing of the Battle of Dan no Yura, and he commands you to perform for him tonight. Take your biwa and follow me at once." In those days, no one dared disobey a samurai's order. Though anxious, Hoichi felt a thrill of pride. Perhaps his talent had finally been recognized by the nobility. The retainer led him a long way until they stopped before a massive gate. Though blind, Hoichi sensed the vastness of the place. The gate creaked open, and they passed through into what felt like a grand garden, then into a hall. He heard sliding doors open, curtains drawn, and the hushed chatter of women. A refined female voice spoke. "Begin your recitation of the hike story." Hoichi bowed and asked which part of the epic they wished to hear. "Tell us of the Battle of Dan no Yura," the woman said, "for it is the most tragic part." Hoichi began to play, pouring his soul into the music. The mournful notes of his biwa carried the listener back to the waves of Dan no Yura, to the clash of armies, the cries of the dying, the storm of arrows. At first, he heard murmurs of admiration, but when he came to the death of Emperor Antoku, the room fell silent, then filled with the sound of weeping. Even Hoichi's heart quailed, fearing he had offended the listeners. At last, the woman's voice spoke again. "We have heard that your skill is unmatched by any living man, but tonight we know the truth. Your talent surpasses even the rumors. My lord is greatly pleased. You must return here every night for the next 6 nights to perform for us again. But you must tell no one of this, under any circumstances." The retainer escorted Hoichi back to the temple just before dawn. Exhausted, Hoichi slept through the morning and said nothing to the priest. The following night, the samurai returned, and Hoichi followed him once more. This time, however, the priest noticed Hoichi's absence and became concerned. On the 3rd night, he had the temple acolytes follow him. They trailed Hoichi through the dark, stormy night, but soon lost sight of him. Then, from the temple graveyard, they heard the sound of the biwa. When they approached, they saw a terrifying sight: Hoichi, sitting before the tomb of Emperor Antoku, drenched in rain, playing his biwa and chanting the tale of Dan no Yura as if before a great audience. Around him, ghostly lights flickered like candles. The terrified acolytes called out, "Master Hoichi, you are bewitched. Come back with us." But Hoichi, entranced, shouted, "How dare you disturb my performance before such noble guests?" The boys dragged him back to the temple. The priest, deeply alarmed, questioned Hoichi until he finally confessed everything. The priest exclaimed, "Alas, Hoichi, these are the ghosts of the hike, luring you to perform for them. If you continue, they will tear you limb from limb. We must protect you at once." That evening, before leaving for another ceremony, the priest had the acolytes strip Hoichi naked and cover his entire body, chest, back, arms, legs, even the soles of his feet, with sacred sutras. When they were done, the priest instructed, "Sit outside on the veranda and remain completely still. No matter what you hear, do not move, do not speak. If you stay silent, they cannot harm you. But if you make a sound, they will destroy you. That night, Hoichi sat motionless. Hours passed. At last, he heard the familiar footsteps, then the voice. Hoichi. No answer. Hoichi. Still silence. The voice grew angry. He is not here. Search everywhere. Footsteps thundered across the veranda, drawing nearer until they stopped right next to him. The night fell silent. Hoichi's heart pounded. Suddenly, the voice growled. The biwa is here, but no man. Ah, but here are 2 ears. If there is no mouth to answer, then we shall take the ears instead. A terrible pain ripped through Hoichi as both ears were torn from his head. He bit his lip and endured in silence. Eventually, the footsteps faded and were gone. At dawn, the priest returned to find blood pooling on the veranda. Horrified, he saw Hoichi still sitting in place, his head streaming with blood. Hoichi, he cried. The blind musician finally broke down, sobbing. The priest realized, with despair, that they had forgotten to write the sutras on Hoichi's ears. Though Hoichi was terribly wounded, he recovered thanks to good care. His strange tale spread throughout the land, and soon nobles and lords traveled to Shimonoseki to hear him perform. Hoichi became wealthy and famous, forever known as Hoichi the Earless.